3.6 is all about multiplying using any method. So we're going to review the 3 methods that we did learn, and we're going to touch on expanded form, which we did not talk about, but we used last chapter. And then you guys are going to practice using any method you would like. So let's take a look at our 4 methods that we can use to multiply. We have our area model, expanded form, partial products, and our regrouping model. So let's dive in a little bit deeper, and we're going to look at our area model and expanded form. When we're doing our area model, we're going to draw our rectangle, split our rectangle into pieces, and then multiply to find all of our partial products. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So one important step when we're doing our area model is that we do write our little multiplication problems inside our rectangles. The reason being, if we do make a mistake, we can find our mistake generally when we're looking at those little individual multiplication problems. And when we do this, we're less likely to forget a 0 when we're multiplying. So if you're doing it in your head, you're more likely to make a mistake than if you just take a few seconds and write something down. After we write our multiplication problems down to find our partial products, we actually do multiply to find our partial products. So when we multiply here, 50 times 20 is 1,000, 50 times 4 is 200, 3 times 20 is 60, and then 3 times 4 is 12. Our next step is going to be to add our partial products. Some of you like to add down, some of you like to add across. It does not matter how you choose to add your partial products. The only thing I've mentioned is that it's better to not add all 4 partial products at once, especially when they're all lined up so nicely for you. So if you added down, we would end up with 1,060. And then if we added down here, we would end up with 212. And then we would add these 2 pieces together, and we would end up with a final product of 1,272. Now, we didn't talk about expanded form very much this chapter, so let's go ahead and touch on expanded form because it is another way that we can multiply and solve these types of problems. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to rewrite our problem. And just like with expanded form before, we're going to expand our numbers. What we didn't do last time was expand both numbers because we only had one number that needed to be expanded. For this, we're going to expand both numbers. And it's important that I put parentheses around those expanded forms just so that I'm following my order of operations. If I were to solve this without my parentheses, I would not end up with the same answer. So I have my parentheses around my expanded form. Now my next step is going to be to distribute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute my 20, multiply it times 50, my 20, multiply it times 3, then I'm going to take my 4, multiply it times 50, and my 4 and multiply it times 3. So my 20 needs to be distributed and multiplied times each of these pieces, and then my 4 needs to be distributed and multiplied by each of these pieces. When we look at these 4 multiplication problems, you'll notice that they're exactly the same 4 multiplication problems that I find in my area model. The difference being that our numbers might be switched, but the commutative property tells us that it doesn't matter which way my numbers are in my multiplication problems. So over in my area model, I have 50 times 20. Over here in my expanded form, I have 20 times 50. Those are the same problem. Okay, so I expanded and I distributed each number into the other parentheses. So I have 20 times 50, 20 times 3. Then I distributed my 4, 4 times 50, 4 times 3. My next step would be to multiply to find my partial products. And my partial products for my expanded form should be exactly the same partial products that I had in my area model, which they are. My next step would be to add my partial products, and I'm going to add 2 at a time. So I have 1,060 plus 212. And then my final step would be to add my partial products together to find my final product. And I'm going to end up with the same final product as I did with my area model. So that's expanded form. We expand both numbers. Then we're going to distribute one number inside the other parentheses and then distribute the other number inside that parentheses. That's what expanded form would look like for these problems. Okay, let's take a look at our other 2 methods that we can use to multiply. We have partial products and we have regrouping, and these look somewhat similar, at least when we set them up, and then there's a few different steps for us to follow to solve these problems. We set both of these problems up vertically, so one number on top of the other. For partial products, we are going to expand our top number twice, so we're going to have 24, 24, and then we're going to multiply it times the expanded version of our second number. So 53 would be 50 and 3 in expanded form. I'm going to multiply 20 times 50, 4 times 50, and then I'm going to multiply times my 3. And that's how I'm going to find my partial products for my partial products method. And then we'll do regrouping in just a minute. Now we talked about with our partial products, it's very important that we line up our place values when we are giving our partial products, when we're solving those individual multiplication problems, just so that we don't have to rewrite everything. We don't want to have to redo all the work we just did. So if we line everything up to start with, we don't have to redo a lot of work. And when I add those partial products together, I get 1,272, just like I did over with my other two methods. And my final method is multiplication with regrouping. I start with my ones place and I multiply my ones place, my 3, times my ones place of my 4, and I get 12. I put my 2, carry my 1. Then I'm going to multiply 3 times 2, and that's 6, plus 1 more is going to give me 7. When I go to my tens place, so when I'm going to start with my 5, I need to put my placeholder down. Then I'm going to multiply my tens place times my ones place, and I get 20. I put my 0 down, and I carry my 2. And then I'm going to multiply my 5, my tens place times my tens place. That's going to give me 10. And 10 plus 2 more gives me a total of 12. And then I'm going to add my two pieces together. And I end up with the same product that I did for my others. So I know that I did everything right, 1,272. So those are our 4 methods that we can use to multiply. We have our area model, expanded form, partial products, and regrouping. For the next problems in this lesson, you can choose whichever method you would like to multiply. I highly encourage you to choose 2 methods to multiply. This way you're making sure that you're getting the right answer. You have 4 methods to choose from. Here's our first problem. Coach K bought 31 new volleyballs for PE. If each volleyball cost $16, how much did she spend on new volleyballs? Go ahead and solve this problem. For this problem, we would have a multiplication problem of 31 times 16 because she's buying 31 volleyballs and each one costs $16. And I want to know how much money she spent. I'm going to use the regrouping model and the area model to solve this problem. So I'm going to start with my area model. I'm going to multiply each of my pieces to find my partial products. And then I'm going to add all of my partial products together. Then I add 2 of my partial products, and then I'm going to add those 2 pieces together to find my final product. And I get a final product of 496. I'm going to check my work using partial products to using my regrouping method to make sure I got the right answer. I'm going to start with my ones place, so 6 times 1 gives me 6. 6 times 3 would give me 18. I'm going to put my placeholder down. Then I'm going to multiply my tens place times my ones place, which gives me 1. Then my tens place times my tens place, which would give me 3. And then I'm going to add my 2 pieces together, which is going to give me $496. So Coach K spent $496 on new volleyballs. Let's take a look at our next problem. This problem says, Miss Ike planted a garden for school. There were 17 rows of vegetable plants with 46 vegetable plants in each row. How many total vegetable plants did she plant? Go ahead and solve this problem. For this problem, we have 17 rows of vegetable plants and 46 in each row. So we're going to be multiplying 17 times 46. I'm going to use partial products to solve this, and then I'm going to check my work with my area model. To set up partial products, I'm going to have my problem set up vertically, and then I'm going to expand my 17 to 10, 7, 10, and 7. Then I'm going to expand my 46 and multiply my top 2 numbers times 40 and my bottom 2 numbers times 6, and I'm going to solve those 2 problems. I'm making sure that my numbers are all lined up so that I have less work to do because I do not want to have to rewrite everything. And I end up with a product of 782. I'm going to check my work using my regrouping or my area model just to make sure that I did everything right. I'm going to add 2 partial products at once. And then I'm going to add my two pieces together, and I get a total product of 782. So how many vegetables did Miss Ike plant? She planted 782 total vegetables. Okay, let's take a look at our next problem. Betty bikes at a speed of 13 miles per hour. How far can she bike in 75 hours? Go ahead and solve this problem now. We're going to start by multiplying 13 times 75. I want to know how many total miles she can bike if she biked for 75 hours. So I'm going to multiply 13 times 75, and I'm going to check my work. I'm going to use my area model, and then I'm going to check using expanded form. So since you should be checking your work and using another form, you should have all of your partial products, all four partial products for the problem. So make sure you are checking your work. All right, those are my four partial products. I'm going to add them, and then I'm going to add them together. So my two pieces when I add down are 750 and 225, and I'm going to add these two pieces together. And I get a final product of 975. I'm going to check my work with expanded form, and this is something that we haven't talked about a whole bunch, but I do want to expose you to what expanded form looks like for 2-digit times 2-digit multiplication. So let's take a look. We start by writing our number, and then we're going to expand 13 and 75 in parentheses. Then I'm going to distribute, and I'm going to multiply my 10 times my 70 and my 10 times my 5, followed by my 3 times my 70 and my 3 times my 5. I'm then going to multiply to find my partial products, so I'm going to solve each of those smaller multiplication problems. I'm going to add two of those numbers at a time just so that I do not have too much work to do and too many numbers to work with at one point in time. And then I'm going to add these two pieces together to find my final product. So I get an answer of 975. And so my question is asking me how far can she bike? She can bike 975 miles in 75 hours. All right. And we have one last problem to look at, so go ahead and solve this last problem for me. Student tickets for Skate World field trip cost $14 each. How much would it cost for 98 students to attend this field trip? We're going to set up our multiplication problem. So we have 14 and 98. So those are our two numbers that we're multiplying together. $14 for each student, and there are 98 students. I'm going to solve this using my area model, and then I'm going to check my work with regrouping. So when I'm drawing out my area model, I'm going to write all of my multiplication problems inside each piece of my rectangle and then solve each of those partial products. Then I'm going to go ahead and add and solve two of those partial products and then add those two pieces together. And then my final step is to add those two pieces together. So I have 980 plus 392. And I get a final product of $1,372. I'm going to check my work using regrouping. I also want to check my work by estimating my product real quick. So it's really easy for me to multiply things times 100. And if I look at 98, it's very close to 100. So I'm not going to round my 14, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and round my 98 up to 100. If I rounded my 14 down, my estimate isn't going to be quite as close. If I just round one number, especially if it's something easy for me to multiply to like 100, it makes my estimate a lot closer to my actual product. So when I go ahead and multiply these two numbers together, I'm going to cross those two zeros out, place them in my product. 14 times 1 is equal to 14. So my estimate would be 1,400. My actual product of 1,372 is very close to that estimate. So I can be pretty confident in my answer. I can also think, okay, if I'm multiplying 14 times 98 and I round 98 up to 100, well then my actual product should be 2 14s or 28 less than my estimate of 1,400, which it is. 1,372 is 28 less than 1,400. Let me go ahead and check my work using partial products. I'm going to multiply my 8 times my regrouping method rather. 8 times 4 is 32. I put my 2 and carry my 3. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 3 more gives me 11. I'm going to put my placeholder down. Then I'm going to multiply my tens place times my ones place, so 9 times 4 is 36. I put my 6 and I carry a 3. 9 times 1 is going to be my next problem. That's equal to 9, plus 3 more is going to be 12. And then I'm going to add these two pieces together. So 2 plus 0 is 2, 6 plus 1 is 7, 1 plus 2 is 3, and then I bring my 1 down. So I get $1,372, which is the same as I got for my area model. Make sure when we are solving these problems that you solve them using two methods. You have 4 methods that you know how to use, so use 2 of them to check your work. That's our lesson for today. See you tomorrow.